All right, folks, so something weird is happening and it is kind of under the radar, right? Not a lot of people recognize that, and even it took me a while. And however, Canada real estate is not bulletproof. It has been proven over and over and over again that it can collapse. However, yes, some people are stuck, and I would like to get into these points. But first of all, I would like to talk about that under the radar stuff, right? So it seems like nowadays, if you're questioning, let's say we're questioning the economy, we're questioning real estate, we're questioning prices, right? Like, it seems like that you are being laughed at, right? And then there are some people, they're kind of under the radar, they're keeping to themselves, and they're literally leaving the countries, right? So in the, I would say, last 6 months to a year, I got friends that are, engineers, doctors, investors, entrepreneurs, and stuff like that. And then I would call them to speak to them and all of that stuff, and their phone is off. I'm like, okay, whatever, right? But then they would call me via WhatsApp, and they're like, hey, look, I'm in Spain now, or I'm in Dubai, or I'm here, I'm there, right? I'm not saying that that's the right choice, but I asked them then straight up, I'm like, well, why did you leave Canada, right? And they felt that the economy is not strong enough and is kind of falling apart. However, the promise for us here, Canadians, in Canada, the promise was you buy a house and you'll be safe. That's your shelter. Now, what happened is probably the script was switched along the way. So whoever literally bought that house at the peak or along the way is literally stuck. So they cannot even leave, even if they wanted to, right? And I'm talking regular, normal, middle-class people, right? Some people that are above that threshold, right? They're quiet, they have maybe the finances and stuff like that, but they're cashing out and they are leaving. They're deploying their money somewhere else, which is sad, right? Like we want Canada. I want Canada to thrive. Like, I want Canada to be the #1 country and to have the best economy and all of that stuff, right? I live here. My kids go to school here. I'm married. I have a wife. I created a business and all of that stuff. So, like, obviously, I want all the best for all of us here in Canada. But unfortunately, the system seems to be rigged, right? And the script has been changed, right? So talking to that point about the middle class and about that particular peak and that mindset, right? And so many comments are coming in. I don't mind it, right? But we have, I would say, a respectful and a healthy way of kind of unpacking this, right? However, some people are so stuck with that idea that real estate cannot fail. In Canada is impossible. It cannot fail. And that is wrong, right? Because it failed before, it will fail again, right? On top of that, I spoke to people in the 90s, and they have been saying, like, look, man, like, it's not as easy as you might think, right? Because when your mortgage goes up and all of that stuff, and this is now a textbook example that is actually happening in 2023 already, 2024, 2025, and it will continue, right? So basically, people will say, hey, look, man, like, I would wake up at 3 a.m., 5 a.m., walking down in my living room trying to figure out how I'm gonna come up with the next mortgage payment, right? So then the theory here is for some of the viewers that say, well, how much was the house worth then and how much was it worth 10 years after that, right? Yes, obviously it's more, right? But in that curve, in that curve, like, it took 10 years of the recovery. So financially, were they literally trapped and anchored to that mortgage, that house, that location, or was it just a walk to the park? So let me tell you, like, it was crazy. Some of those people obviously went bankrupt, but some went through through a hard time keeping their properties. So now we are in this phenomena that people believe, oh, you know, like the springtime is gotta hit, September's gotta hit, man. This is the bottom. But they are somehow not explaining or giving numbers, right? And yes, there's a simple theory. Look, nobody is buying, you buy. Everybody is buying, you don't buy. Very simple. However, I want to touch on that, right? Do you remember the time of the pandemic? At that time, including friends, colleagues, I don't know, YouTube channels, you name it, right? People were not blaring that idea, right? If they wanted to buy, they were quiet about it. They bought a bigger house. They bought maybe investment properties. They bought whatever they have bought, right? But they were kind of hush-hush about it, and they were kind of delivering on their internal plan because they were assuming, like including me and everyone else, right? It's just I didn't pull that many triggers. Some people pulled 1,000 triggers, right? And they, who knows what else they did. But they thought, okay, so this is it. And all they did, they were kind of like posting on social media, like, you know, like quiet about it. They would stand in front of their house and their new house, right? That they went into ridiculous amounts of debt, and they would stand in front of it and they'll post something like very short, very sophisticated, right? They'll be like, when you get there, you get there. Like something like that, right? And it's weird, like, you know, like it wasn't like that bragging right was so all of a sudden sophisticated, right? People throwing around millions. Everybody, like, I remember I could not even talk to anybody because they knew so much about everything that it was insane. And then getting into, let's say, you know, real estate as realtors, right? Like it you know, you could not even talk to a newbie, like an amateur, green, just off the bench realtor, because they were so up in their head, because they knew as soon as they get that license and they get registered somehow in a crappy brokerage or a excellent brokerage, it didn't matter, because they would throw their business card off of the balcony and somebody will catch it in the lobby and they have a deal, right? So it was that perception that everyone believed that it was because of their ability. However, it was printing money, and everything was rigged for success. You didn't have to do or know anything about anything. All you had to do, have a pulse, have a name, and you got it, right? So today, things are somehow changing. Everybody is yelling out there, go buy, now it's the time, you go buy. Nothing is gonna come. You see what I'm saying? It's the actual opposite, right? So I don't understand. Maybe you can comment below what you actually feel if we're gonna have an amazing, extravagant growth in real estate of 2025, 2026, right? I believe we're not. However, like looking just generally at the landscape in Canada, it's too bad, because so many people are leaving this beautiful country, right? Like you think about it. At one point of time, we were inventing stuff. We were the ones guiding stuff. We were the ones that were known for politeness. You wanted to go to Canada, you knew you were safe. You people were dreaming. I'm sure even nowadays they're dreaming about Canada, right? But people felt it in their hearts, right? Even the newcomers, like they had respect. I remember 20, 30 years ago, people had respect, right? And maybe, you know, maybe they're coming from cultures that they're not holding doors. Let's say you walk into a mall and it could be, you know, an Asian guy, let's say from Japan. I had this case like 25 years ago, and he didn't hold the door in a mall, right? It was cold, whatever. And I commented, I said, oh, you're not gonna hold the door for me? And he turned around, he said, I'm so sorry. You know, like in my city, there's so many people that we don't have time to hold the door for each other, right? Because then you would literally stand there for 3 hours, right? So you just open the door, you go through and stuff like that. But I'm sure that that guy or the man adjusted and he understood, oh my gosh, right? So he wasn't angry or anything like that. He was more thankful that I brought it up, right? So I believe that's something that we are also missing nowadays. Now, bringing to that point that I started this video with, like something is happening and people are being quiet about it. They're leaving slowly under the radar and stuff like that. They're deploying their money somewhere else, which is extremely sad, right? It's not, you know, in this Canada bubble. And then the people that are trying to sell, they're trying to exit, they're trying to cash in or whatever, they're being laughed at, right? Because are they being laughed at because they're exposing the whole thing or system or whatever, right? And even today I looked at the MLS, right? And Toronto condos, you know, I'm sure there's people out there buying these condos by the day. Good for you, God bless you, no problem. But I have seen that literally within 1 or maybe 2 weeks of a gap, right? There was like a $35,000 to $40,000 price correction, right? Because somebody in that tower, that building, had to reduce, I'm assuming, because they had to sell, because they couldn't carry it anymore, right? So that's what I'm saying, guys, is not as simple, unfortunately, as it looks. But all I'm trying to do here, I'm not trying to give you an advice. Do whatever you want, right? It's just trying to open up the other side of the spectrum. So you might analyze it and you might say, hey, look, it makes sense. So let me look at it and let me try to align myself for a better future. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you gained some valuable information. So please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.